Gentlemen, welcome back to Performance Talk. My name is Yul Gordon. Our guest today is Chris. Make sure I get this right. McQuilkin.
That's right, McQuilkin. Yeah,
Okay,
very
okay.
Irish.
Yeah, I had to sound it out because I'm sure you get McGilquin a lot.
McGuick, McGillicuddy, McCulkin, you name it.
Yeah, I bet. The Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and we get this show rolling with the conversation. Introduce yourself to our audience, our listeners.
Awesome, yeah, gladly. So, Coach McQuilkin, I'm from Katy, Texas, which is West Houston, and that springboarded me an opportunity. I started a lacrosse team in high school, which afforded me the opportunity to go to college and play some Division III ball, which presented my first opportunity to coach. So within the high school realm, anybody that's seen the movie Friday Night Lights, that's very representative of the climate and the culture that I grew up with. The movie, not the TV show. High school's not that dramatic. So I'm sure you can relate. I'm sure you heard of Katy football. The
Indeed.
challenge is I didn't go to Katy High School. I went to their rival, so we were used to getting our asses kicked a lot.
Yeah.
And our coaches, they decided, so my junior year, they decided to take the sophomore class and put them all on varsity above us, and that stung a little bit socially, right? You're a junior on JV, you're waiting for your moment, and the coaches wanted to buy time within their careers, just buy 3 more years with the school before there's a change in coaching staffs by
Ooh.
selling hope, and they neglected my squad, my boys, and we took it personally, to quote Michael Jordan, and we started a lacrosse team, and we were basically a bunch of football players with sticks, and but we
Mad football players with sticks.
exactly, we believed we were winners, we believed we were leaders, and our performance was then decided by somebody else. We didn't like it, and we just had the crazy idea of this thing called lacrosse at all 16 years old. And there was about 10 teams in Houston at the time. There was a summer league, so we just showed up, freaking ragtag, bunch of bad news bears, if you could imagine, guys that
Yep.
don't know how to play the sport. And fortunately, we found a guy who had a nephew that actually played for Katy football, Coach Kavanaugh, and he's a Long Island guy, so he's all
Yeah.
like super muscle upper body, and then chicken legs straight down. So he's a great
Uh, you
man.
know, yeah.
Yeah. So he was living in Katy, and he understood the football culture. He understood where we're coming from, and he loved lacrosse and wanted to give back to us. And he volunteered his time. He was a great guy, and he just planted this seed of opportunity. So 5 of the 10 of us went on to go play some college ball, and he gave me a great quote that I hold on to, and then I'm going to present here today. So he said, "You're remembered for what you're not supposed to do." And
Yep.
there's multiple sides of that, right? If we think
Yep.
about, you're a phenom, you're a big fish in this small town, you're supposed to go do great things. You go to a major university for your athletics, but then you realize as soon as you get there, everybody's that big fish. Everybody's awesome. So it's it's an opportunity for people to rise to the occasion, or
Exactly.
oh, they were supposed to do great things, but so I wasn't supposed to go do great things. I was a lacrosse player from Texas. I went and played on the East Coast. I wasn't supposed to have success. I
Right.
was successful in spite of my high school coaches, in spite of being from Texas. I didn't know how to play the game. I played it my way with a football mentality. I used my head as a weapon, which was new to this finesse sport at the
Right.
time. So I found a role on the team, and for 3 of my 4 years there, I was a captain and earned the respect of my coaching staff and my teammates. And they gave me the opportunity to become a grad assistant coach. So that was my first coaching opportunity. Was with Division III lacrosse, and many coaches can relate that maybe stepped into that role where they were a part of a team. So these were my boys. Like, we hung out. I understood the fun times. We done a bunch of stupid stuff we shouldn't have done. So now I was in an authority position for these guys. So that transition from teammate, leader, to now I got to lay down the law. So
Right.
I struggled with that. Right? You had imposter syndrome, and it really hit when I had to go and hit the recruiting trail for the sport, and that was wild because you would go to these showcases, these summer ball tours where kids would join club teams, come from all around. I go to Philadelphia, I'd go to Virginia, Maryland, up and down that East Coast.
Right.
But I was recruiting kids that had been playing the sport longer than I have. I'm 22, 23 years old at this time, been playing for 6 years,
Right.
and I got to go recruit kids that they have an instinct and an knack for this that I still have yet to develop. And imposter syndrome hit. So my thinking was, all right, I'm gonna look for me. I'm gonna look for that athlete that can just move, shake, and then we're gonna have 4 years to actually coach and teach them how to play lacrosse. That was my thinking. The challenge was like I didn't know how to develop them athletically. I didn't know how to develop them skill wise, so I just didn't know what the hell I was doing. And all I knew from Texas, right, is lift weights, run as fast as you can, and play your sport. So that's how I felt I would make an impact as a coach. The beauty is I was working with Division III athletes. I had the weight room time, and then I had the field time. I was doing both skill and strength work.
Right.
So
Preparation. Yeah.
I learned how to communicate. If they weren't understanding something in the weight room, I would reference lacrosse. If they weren't understanding something in lacrosse, I'd reference the weight
Right.
room and started to learn how to communicate and then also learn how to program and coach because I was fortunate to work with Division III athletes first and didn't know what I was doing, but they weren't strong enough or powerful enough or fast enough to hurt themselves in training. So I was able to make a lot of mistakes because they weren't athletic enough to learn then to develop athleticism and athletes and strength and power and speed, right? It's just a matter of getting stronger, faster, not necessarily uh, getting Ferraris like at the University of Texas and having them, okay, don't hurt them as a strength job and responsibility.
Right. I
So,
mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. The when you get a blank slate to work with, you have a lot more um, leeway, a lot more room to for things to vary and the kids to absorb. When you get that kid that's supposed to be a 5 star, although I've seen some, trust me, I've seen some that couldn't find their way around the weight room, but when you get that kid that's supposed to be a 5 star, you got to get him where he needs to be in a hurry, and then you have that added pressure from coaching staffs, recruitment, all that stuff, not to hurt them.
oh yeah.
And in
And
many cases, what I found is the habits they bring with them are going to determine what hurts. So,
that
so if they have bad movement habits or bad lifting habits or just they don't warm up enough or whatever, and they've gotten away with that at lower levels because they've always been the main guy. Now
yeah,
when
and
they have to now when they have to ask a little bit more of themselves physically, you can't get away with not preparing, not being prepared.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to get into is that habit. So the fortunate thing that I have was my graduate degree was in health behavior change. So I was learning
Mm-hmm.
how different behaviors, and I was looking from an athletic lens, from an athlete lens,
Right,
where the lessons were, hey, quit smoking, walk, like park the farthest away from the office as you can and walk.
right,
Okay,
right,
but what's the psychology there? What's the behavior we're trying to use from that lesson? So learned a lot of health behavior models, a lot of the work that James Clear puts out based off of habit models and a lot of the materials that I was learning in school. So I was diving into my personal time understanding performance training, then getting the formal education in behavior and able to to find my pattern, my connection for coaching these athletes, which after 3 years with that unit, I discovered I was a hell of a better strength coach than I was a lacrosse coach. Still imposter syndrome. So then I jumped over to Georgetown University to only be a strength coach.
Okay.
The revelation there was that I wanted men's lacrosse. Georgetown University men's lacrosse, awesome opportunity. I was then an assistant for men's, and in teams I was given, I was handed women's lacrosse. I was handed the men's and women's crew team for Georgetown, and then
Right.
helped out with football and weight room wherever I could.
You got a little
So
variety, didn't you?
exactly. So now I love this sport. I learned how to communicate in the weight room with this field sport. Now they've given me a boat team. I have what you call negative buoyancy. I sit in the water and sink.
Yeah. Join
Like
the club.
yeah, I've never been on a boat. So now I got to think, all right, movement. It's not sport. I got to think movement based, and then
Right.
learn to demand now the energy demands for crew. They have different season, right? The
Right.
energy within the fall is a longer race. In the spring, it's a sprint. Now we also have weight class athletes. So all these factors where I again did not understand where I needed to dive in and understand this stuff. So okay, I'm researching and also good
So
jumping to
needs
the
of the so needs of the individual, and then demands of the sport. Gotcha.
exactly. So these are lessons where like you have to learn quickly, especially with the expectations of a Division One coach who
Absolutely.
their job is relying on these 18 to 22-year-olds to shut up and listen, right? To quote the Houston Rockets owner. I'm going to reference a lot of Texas coaches here,
That's all right.
but
That's where we are right now, ladies and gentlemen. We're in Texas, so we're gonna get the Texas quotes and references.
yeah,
That's all right.
it's so also at that disadvantage. I assumed as a Division III athlete, not spending time in D1, I assumed that these were hardworking, passionate individuals that had just they had their logo on their chest and they wanted it just because they were there. That's not true. Like especially with the academic load of
Yeah, and
Georgetown.
the time constraints and
Oh yeah. So
all
the
that. Yep.
last they especially crew team, right? You got your practice at the ass crack of dawn, 5 a.m. You're out on the water ready and training. And then they were given the last time slot, 5:30 p.m. in the weight room. So you had to be a student all day and then bookend your day as an athlete. Like by the time you finish the weight room and like the cafeteria is closed, like there's a specific, you get 60 minutes for this training block, and if you go over, me, because I was delayed, like that's a penalty. So all
Right.
these responsibilities that were thrust onto me and understanding and assumptions just getting shot down to realize, okay, I got to connect with these kids and have passion to get excited. I'm not going to get mad at them. I'm going to actually learn who they are, and which me as a previous athlete at Marymount University Division III, I was these friends with these teammates that they became my athletes. I already had an emotional connection with them. Now stepping into Georgetown, assuming they're all dialed in superhuman athletes, no, they're humans. So I had a responsibility now to connect with them on an emotional level, right? Emotional quotient for a coach, and start relating to them to get buy-in and meet them where they're at versus holding them at this high expectation, putting them on a pedestal because they're Division 1, and
Absolutely.
realizing they're just
Right.
18, 22-year-old kids. I was in their shoes once at a less prestigious position, but it's essentially the same. So
Yeah.
helping
I mean,
connect with them.
when when we start thinking about athletes, we sometimes look at their physical age, their training age, their sport skills age, and we don't look at their chronological age and understand that their psychological age is attached to that more so than it is all those other ages. You can look like $1 million, be 6'4", but if you're 18, you're 18, and
Eh,
you may have had some experiences as a a 17 or 18-year-old, but you're still not an adult.
And
So
yeah, and that's that assumption that if somebody sees you and your stature and you're a larger individual, they assume that they know your gifts. They assume
right,
that you're mature. They assume based off your size. So that I fell into that trap, and a lot of coaches do as well. A lot of
yeah, I see
recruiters
it.
do too. So in the recruiting trail, again, it's a snapshot of this kid from one camp, one practice, one summer league versus like who they are.
Yep,
Then
and
they
one practiced interview.
and it's
You
not
know,
enough.
everybody gets to practice the interview with the recruiter, the interview with the potential coach. You know, the only person that you're getting raw is the coach that comes to your house and recruiting.
And I hope that's the formal, and I hope the parents can understand the value. And like in the movie Air, where Jordan's mom, like she's got the walls up, and you got to break them down and connect with her to
Right.
connect with her son. So I hope that's what it goes on out there, versus stepping into the logo, stepping into the assumptions that I did, jumping from D3 to D1. the the valuable lessons, and you mentioned the different ages. So here's notes to take if you're a coach out there for emotional quotient
Yep.
EQ, right? IQ, that's your understanding of sets, reps, programming, and progressions. But then coaching, if we can sum it down to, it's working on your emotional quotient and skills. So leading off with relate, and these are going to go in order of the lessons that I learned them from my experience
Right.
in my early years of coaching. The first is going to be relate, right? My teammates, easy to relate. Now stepping into new sport, new shoes, new university, how can I relate? Men are different from women, and now the freaking age gaps. I learn a new word from the student athletes every single week
Yeah.
that how I've learned to relate is learning their language, right? Bet,
You have to.
Riz, all this stuff that's going around on talk ticks. Then I spin it into like a funny way um, to do that. So I use language to relate. Music is an amazing way to relate. Asking them about their favorite music and their artists, and then go listen to it and bring it to them. And another way is having them teach you their sport. If it's volleyball, softball, rowing, crew, all these things that you didn't play, that you don't understand, then dive in and have them coach you. That's going to help build that bridge. And then if it is a sport you played, ask them about their style. How did they prepare? What is special about the routes that they do or their setup on the offensive line? All these different things that are
In our
unique to them.
profession, as strength coaches, we a lot of times get locked into one sport,
Hmm.
and we're there, and we assume that we know what's good for the athlete instead of what you're talking about right now. Asking the athlete, hey, you know, I understand I'm here to help you, and those things, but what are your desires? What do you want? Because I understand the needs of the sport by position if necessary. We've evaluated you, we've assessed and trained, or we've assessed and all those things. So we think we know what you need. Now, what would you like?
Yeah,
What would you like to change? So there was a buy-in point for me with athletes, especially in different sports. Is like, okay, what do you want from this?
exactly. So that proposing questions, which great segue. We didn't plan on this, but great segue to the next lesson learned is leading individuals. So the ability to recognize and lead the mental and emotional state of the individual athlete.
Right?
And it is asking those questions. It is connecting. It's asking about what's going on outside of the weight room and the field with relationships, with school, with parents, family, travel,
Right.
all the way back home. Because if they're going from California to East Coast or Texas to East Coast or all the way up to Michigan and the northern states, like that's important because homesick is going to be factored in.
Yeah, it's a big culture change too.
Yes. So they were sold, the family was sold, but those communities are completely different. in terms of the world, the towns, everything around them. So then you as a native there, right, even if you're just moving there, take them out to coffee, get to know them outside. What's their favorite restaurant? What's their favorite coffee spot? Have you tried this place? In a respectful, professional manner, try to have that opportunity to then create moments of connection to help then when you do got to be an authority figure, put your foot down, put a barrier in place, and make a stand for them or call them out for some of their behaviors that are not matching their goals or what they say they want. You now can have their ears up and to listen. So
What
that
I bring what I bring into that as you talk about that is when I especially when I'm talking to young professionals is and when you go in there you have to determine yourself and still yourself to care.
hmm
And I get this big look, you know, what do you mean? I said you have to care about what you're doing. You have to care about how you do it. You have to care about your presentation. You have to care about, most importantly, the athlete. I said because the athlete's going to be the first one to tell you, the first one to tell you either verbally or non-verbally that he doesn't think you care,
hmm
and it's going to be by his or her reactions to what you're they're either not going to buy in, they're not going to listen to you, they're going to be late or whatever the case may be. They don't think you care about them. So, and that's a lot of times the case. I won't say 100% the case, but if they don't trust you and they don't feel you care, it doesn't matter. If
No.
they feel like you care, they're going to help you do your job better and help them.
And as an individual, if they see other teammates that are having behaviors that are out of line, showing up late, if one athlete knows that they trust you and know that you care, they start to step up into leadership roles and call the
Oh
other
yeah,
out just as you would. So that's an important and notice behavior. And this is a lesson that I learned, which I want to get into. So it's social emotional leadership,
yep,
and starting by leading the individual. If they're late, if there's consistent or a behavior shift or change, like don't get mad at them. I would blame the individual, and this is a major change and mistake. I would think like, what's wrong with this kid? Completely
yeah. A lot of
in
times it's yeah. I got you.
something's going on. So like
That's your first indicator.
instead of me wanting it more than them, why are they late? Why are their grades going the wrong direction? Why are they talking back to me? Right? If it's as simple as, hey, your foot is in the wrong position on the lunge, your foot's turning out in your lunge, aim for toes forward the next step, and they come back with, I'm not doing that. I didn't do that.
Or
Okay,
why,
well,
that doesn't matter.
yeah,
Yeah.
or yeah. So
Anything.
where I could come with an IQ response being actually, yes, toes forward on a lunge. We are patterning, so when you take a big step, your toes forward, we can force the ground, blah, 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 blah. They don't
Yeah.
care
Yep.
about that.
Nope.
So if there's a spin zone back to you, okay, I'm not going to step into their space and their zone. I'm gonna be like, okay, what do we need right now in this moment? How about next rep try this? And then if they continue to intentionally now or exaggerate their toes out just to be that kid, okay, we're gonna hold them back for a moment afterwards for a word and try to see what's going on. So again, thinking like, all right, there's they're not a problem child. There's something going on that I need
Yeah,
to, and
especially if that's a new behavior. Yep.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So just a friend of mine, Jim Davis, amazing coach, NSCA speaker, good athlete project. He says he calls this scanning for deltas. We're just looking for things that are off. And to
Yep.
quote the great Charlie Francis, sprint coach, if it don't look right, it don't fly right. So if you get that instinct as a coach, like something's off here, whether
Yeah.
it's movement or behavior, you need to step in and investigate for that individual. Um, so important lessons, and then as I continue to step up and spend time with Georgetown, the I started to learn how to lead a team now. So from an
Mm-hmm.
individual, the mental and emotional state, Now the mental and the emotional state of a team.
Yep. Group
So
dynamics.
group dynamics, and fortunately I love this stuff. I live off team sports. There's many professionals out there that come from individual sports and step into team. So this may be foreign to them, and they may just
Right.
assume it's the same, or assume, or have
Oh,
that
it's a whole different ball game.
it 1,000%.
You
And
I
like,
you hear me, you see me nod my head up and down, and you hear me interjecting here a little bit, Chris, is because I've been around, it seems like 100 years into this stuff, since '85. So I've seen it. I've seen coaching and strength and conditioning at its best and at its worst. And I know that coaching, I was fortunate to come through high school and college with great coaching, just
yeah,
all around. And it started with, I knew that they cared. I knew that they gave a hoot about, you know, whether or not I was successful. Now that didn't mean I was always going to be, I was going to be their starter, or I was going to be that. That stuff has to be earned. But I did know that they cared about me as an individual, so I did not mind working hard. Plus there's some goals and objectives I had as well. But if they told me I was doing something wrong, or they called me out on something, which I got called out several times, I respected that.
yeah.
And I didn't give them a lot of guff about it. I might have told them how I felt, but then I recommitted and went back to work, and it
And
never was a long drawn out ordeal. You know what I mean?
yeah, and that's high self awareness on your part, and that's going to help lead them, and you are modeling that lesson that you want from them.
Right.
So if you may have a blind spot or a misstep, or you misspoke, or a behavior, and they call you out from it, right? If we don't tolerate language in the weight room, but then we curse at a
Right. And
moment,
we're wrong.
then they're going to be there to call you out. And then that's a chance for you, if you make a mistake, on how to model the behavior that you
Yeah.
want out of them when you call them out for their mistakes. So you taking that responsibility and be like, you're right. I made a mistake. That's progress
I give you.
versus
I
sorry.
can give you. No, I'm sorry. I just for our listeners, I give them antidotes and little examples sometimes of what you're talking about right now. Is here's the example. Here's the example of that. Um, in my facility in South Carolina, I didn't allow cursing. You couldn't come in there and be cursing. I didn't really
Hmm.
want, a lot of music with cursing or whatever. If you had it in your headphones, I didn't care. But we weren't going to play it out loud. And if you were heard cursing, every athlete in the building would call you out, and that was push-ups. Your first time it was 10. After that it went up to 50. The first time was the lesson. The next time was hey, no, we don't do that.
Hmm.
Well, guess who got called out for cursing? And we didn't allow it for any reason. But I pulled a 25-pound plate off the bar, slipped out of my hands, and it was a expletive. Jumped back real quick, and I'm standing there and I'm picking up the weight thing, and I had 6 people staring at me when I stood up and turned around. I just got down and started doing push-ups.
And
But that was what we did. We didn't curse in there for any reason. So you paid the price. It was either 10 if that was your first time, or it was 50 there on out. And
yeah,
didn't matter
and
what training session you were in.
no, and that was 10 push-ups.
Right.
So it didn't cost you a lot, but the benefit that it showed those young men is they're going to remember that moment, which is very beneficial to you. So you have a decision when you make a mistake and your team calls you out for it, of how to model how you want them to react when they are called out for
Right.
their behaviors, which is going to happen. They're 18 to 22. They're going to make
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to
behaviors.
happen, and you can't put yourself above that, and you can't let them get away with that.
Hmm.
So here's what I also tell young professionals going in. I said, now you can't go in and curse every time you want to just because you can do 50 push-ups. You know,
No.
just because 50 push-ups doesn't bother you, you can't make that an excuse. Why? That's all right. I paid my push-ups. No, that's not the point. So there's got to be you have to understand that there's going to be times when there's going to be more. Okay, since you can't control your language, young lady, we're going to need you. We don't want to see you again till really next week.
Yeah. And I mean, the weight room is a privilege.
Yeah.
So there's an
So
opportunity.
there's things that you can do now. I would tell you know youngsters that, not say youngsters because all you guys are young to me, but I would say, if you're a newer professional, don't go overboard with it. You don't have to go overboard, but it's just a point. And if you we call them standards. If you hold yourself to standards and you hold them to standards, they're gonna look to you to see how high that mark is.
Yeah. And they'll be looking for that
Yeah,
because then it's going to give them room to not listen, to make mistakes,
right,
which outside of the weight room, there are authority figures that again they're challenging with certain behaviors to push boundaries. But then I truly believe as a strength coach, as in the weight room especially, this is where there is no margin for error. Like
safety.
if we lose our awareness, safety is a factor. So the lessons that we learn can translate into life, business, success on the field, all the things we want. But then there is no more dangerous place as well for low awareness than the weight room.
Yeah,
Um, on the field, low awareness would get your ass chewed out by a coach in the film session. In the weight room, it could knock somebody out, right? If you take both 45s off of one side and leave,
yeah,
25, 45 on the other side, that thing's going over.
yeah.
And that's deadly
We
weapon.
we both seen close calls in the weight room. Close calls where it should have been an accident, but an accident could have been disastrous at best, and to be honest, fatal at worst.
Hmm.
You
So,
don't put 300 pounds on something and then not pay attention to it.
no. Or your teammates when you're in the spotting role on the rotation. Like,
Right?
this is, yes, this is your favorite song of all time, but at the same time, I want
Yeah,
that to be your favorite teammate of all time.
yeah. Your responsibility is to your teammate right there.
So the leading the team, all these are lessons, and we're looking for mistakes uh, that will appear when we're managing the team, managing the weight room, right? We can't teach every single lesson before we set them free in the weight room. There's going to be daily, anytime they're in the weight room, something that we need to make note of, and then turn it into a
Right.
teachable moment. So leading the team, like we're utilizing our weight room time, whether it's 1 hour a week or we get that 8 hours with the team, which is awesome in the off season. So we need to use and teach lessons every time.
Which keeps shrinking.
No, yes, no kid. Uh, yeah, in my time in high school, just that transition, my freshman and sophomore summers, we were allowed to have footballs at summer training. But then that transition, the Texas UIL made it a rule. If you had a
Yeah.
ball at practice at summer training, it was considered a practice. And so that changed everything. Like we had former pros come out and very passionate individuals using drills. It was awesome.
Yeah.
But then our high school coaches took over the training, and yeah, that's when it went downhill. But the yeah, continuing with the EQ list. Next up is motivation. So the motivational psychology, right? You have a lot of power as a coach and authority, where they expect you to be an expert because you know more than them. You're an expert in their eyes, and you have a lot of power. So this is many coaches' first possession of power in the quote Spider-Man, right? To
Yeah.
great power comes great responsibility. Some just don't know how to handle that. They may be pushovers, and like we were talked about, athletes will push and try to establish and see how far they can get away with things, or they go too overboard, right? They
Right.
try to be too much of an authority figure, and then now, okay, I can't relate. Uh, he doesn't understand. He's not going to listen to me. XYZ, and then you lose the athlete, and then guess what you try to do? More authority, more power, more
Yep.
push, and it
Force
just
them to
drives
do it.
them.
It
Yeah,
all again. I go back to carrying, Chris.
yeah,
You can put a lot of this in carrying. If you're not hard enough, then I used to tell some of my athletes the best thing I can do for you in today's conditioning session is make you drag yourself out of here.
hmm
That's the best thing I can do for you because I care about you. Because if you're not prepared to go as far as I'm going to push you, you won't go far enough in the games, which means your success is going to be either limited or not what you want.
yeah.
So sometimes carrying is making the athlete work harder.
It,
I know as a veteran, when we trained and I took troops out, I said, best thing I can do for you is train you to a high standard and if you're mad at me because we keep doing it over and over and over, think about if we do this if this pops up when we deploy.
and yeah, connecting that their
Right.
performance
To
to the
something
training,
real.
to something
Yeah.
real. Yeah,
Yep.
man. And that takes a whole understanding of the psychology. And again, it's you never when you're stressing somebody, whether it's under a barbell or during conditioning, and I want to see how they react, and then I, as a
Oh,
coach, can help shape that behavior. So if they're talking back to me during conditioning, if they're as they, you don't understand how this feels, or whatever motion comes out of them, it's better it's happening now that I'm there as a mentor. I can shape it versus in a
right.
game or in military and combat scenarios or fires or you know uh, in a police situation. If somebody's on something, stress is going to be higher.
Yeah.
I can't let them go to that. And to use a Navy SEALs term, right? Nobody rises to the occasion. There's no such thing as a gamer. Everybody falls to the level of their training.
Right.
So
Yeah.
helping them understand their stress during conditioning, during hard weight training sessions, this is exactly who they are in the
That's who
fourth
you're gonna
quarter.
be. Yep.
It's who you're going to be. So now helping them increase their self awareness, increase their social awareness. I love, in terms of motivation, this again awesome experience for at Georgetown because Coach Kevin Warren, who's still there now, and they're a top five program in the country. He didn't inherit a top five program. He had a lot of kids, and he wanted to change culture. So Coach Sean Foster, who's still there now, he instilled us with the opportunity to make everybody quit. Whoever survives our fall training, they're going to be the team that he goes into to battle with during the spring. So we had a lot of tools at our exposure. I don't know if you've ever been to Washington D.C. or seen the movie The Exorcist.
Yep.
There's
Both.
giant steps that are just right next to campus that
Right.
every athletics program goes out, and it's a form of punishment, I like to call it, right? So we would put these guys through the gauntlet of running the stairs, and I would be waiting at the top with simple, just pillar work.
Yeah.
So elbows and toes, side pillar, elbow, stack your feet, dead bugs where they're laying back on the
Yeah.
laying down on their
Gotcha.
back, arms and legs are straight. So isometrics as a form of motivation. I want to see who these guys are when the going gets tough. Who disappears up their own into their own head, up their own butt, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
when the going gets tough, or who proud chest, tall, pretty posture when the going gets tough, and they're screaming, "Let's go, guys! We got this!" So stress, I'm applying it. I'm not saying anything. I'm not motivating here. I'm letting the movements do the mind work here, and seeing who comes out, and then we just communicate to Coach Warren, hey, Johnny stepped up today. Luke, nope, he disappeared here. So different communications. But I'm not labeling Luke. I'm now going to Luke and saying, hey man, eyes up, or open your eyes, or no fists, right? The national or the physical sign for stress is clenching the fists.
Yeah.
It goes up into the shoulders, and now it affects my running technique. So using pillars, if I can relax my hands, even in pillars, Then I control my shoulder girdle, so I'm learning how to
Right.
run faster just by controlling my stress, as an example. So telling him and making that point, like using IQ to, hey man, I'm going to call you out when we're in a stressful space. Here's why. So when I say no fists, this is exactly what I'm doing. I'm not being a jerk.
That explanation, you do two things with that. You call them out, and you let them know, hey, we see you. We understand that you're stressing, but you can get through this. Here's how you do it. That's when you give them the pillars,
Mm-hmm.
and the we call them shit. What do we call them? Anyway, is where you identified what the problem was. We call them something too. We didn't call them pillars, but it was it's one of those things where we have three things we say eyes. We have chest up, eyes at 45, and hips behind you. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of guys will get standing and push their hips forward, their chest is sagging, their eyes are down, and that's where we didn't start.
Yeah.
It's chest up, eyes at 45, hips behind you. Stand up, be ready to go. And then I like the hands thing, but yeah. So when you're talking to young professionals, or when you're teaching other professionals as well, what are some of the biggest issues they have with being able to do that?
Uh, it, it's going to be imposter syndrome. So I want you to know your information, but before you know your information, I want you to know yourself. And this is the biggest challenge. Again, I go back to the high school quote where you're going to be remembered for what you're not supposed to do. And now I take that mindset into me as a coach. So if there is an underdog within the team, say there's a walk-on or a freshman, hey man, we have an opportunity to surprise some people here. And then if there is a leader who's more of an introvert, then I communicate, okay, here's an opportunity. You have these expectations where you're in this leadership position as a quarterback or a point guard. Here's the expectations. I'm going to meet you where you're at, and I'm going to help put you in a position to understand leadership. So when I'm speaking to young professionals, it's the same drill. You're going to, just as you were an athlete once, I want you to be the coach that you want coaching you. That starts with self-awareness. From
Yep.
self-awareness, it progresses into social awareness, right? That's that
Yep.
relating to my athletes. So if I know myself, I know my limitations. I'm a 5'7" white guy from West Houston, genetic trash can, Division III athlete, lacrosse player from Texas. I'm an oxymoron, right? I make fun of myself. So when I step into the University of Texas football weight room, so then I had an opportunity to work under Benny Wiley and Mad Dog during Coach Mac Brown's last year.
Yep.
Like it looks like I shouldn't be there, but I roll with that and make connection with guys through music or my just having fun with them because I can move well. I'm just not big. So now I'm working with them. I was in charge of the offensive line. So again, another oxymoron. I shouldn't be with these guys, but I gained their respect quickly just through relating with them. So the
Right.
social awareness. From social awareness, it steps into self-management. Just as you described, like I'm gonna make mistakes. I'm gonna drop a weight. Quick feet
Right.
are happy feet, but I'm gonna watch my language or do my best to.
Right.
So self-management. I
And
need
it's
to.
and it's not an excuse.
It's not an excuse.
I
And
shouldn't
and
have I shouldn't have done it because I've known better. There were other words,
yeah,
but I did. So
and
you
and
accept it and you suck it up and drive on.
and, and owning that. So now I know I need to be the first person in the weight room. I need to be the last person off the bus. I need to make sure that the locker room is clean, my car is clean, I am representing all of the behaviors and modeling the expectations and the standards, to use a word that we introduced earlier, that my
Right.
athletes that I hold my athletes to. And that's requiring a lot of understanding of my blind spots to where I am not perfect. I also don't need to be perfect, but I need to understand and talk about my limitations and my weaknesses and be vulnerable. Like, hey, I'm still working on XYZ.
I think that's particularly important for younger professionals and what I call mid-career professionals. That's what you are. What have you been at this about 10 or 12 years?
15.
15? You're a vet now at 15 years. But think about this, right? Think about this. When you first came in, you talked about some of the challenges and the things. And, anytime you go into anything new, you're always going to be kind of,
Mm-hmm.
wide-eyed. And then you talked a little bit about imposter syndrome. I think we all had that at some point where you go, okay, am I really qualified to do X? You know what I mean? But then
Mm-hmm.
when you start breaking down the 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 profession and the responsibilities of the profession, you are. But you have to learn that.
Yeah.
You have to go through and learn that. That's nothing somebody can just tell you. But when they start having those feelings, they need to know that they have somewhere to go. But at the first 5 years in this business, you really got to shut up and keep learning. The next 5 years, while you continue to learn, that's a theme that goes all the way through your career, learning. While you continue to learn, you have to then take on the responsibility of passing that on, teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And where you are right now is going into that while you're giving that information to the next generation and providing these tools for the next generation, continuing to grow.
And still do.
So
That's the aim.
yeah,
Lifelong
so
learner.
so so growth, learning, and giving back is something that's paramount all the way through your career and even after you're thinking about retirement.
Yeah, and the that leads to the last point, which is relationship skills.
Yep,
Like this is a small world and a small profession. So
exactly.
it doesn't matter where you start, be nice to the team around you, whether you're leading up to the head coach or one of the assistant strength coaches or your intern level. Be nice, respectable, and get to know every person because if they stick into the career, which is very challenging, they're going to be head coaches one day. And those
And
are going to
some
be the relationships for you hold for a lifetime.
somebody said this, and I know they said it, and I know I'm paraphrasing it, so I can't. I was trying to think of who said it, but I took it to heart way back when I first heard it. Is my first judgment of you is how you treat people that you think are beneath you. How do you treat the waitress at the restaurant? How do you
Mm-hmm.
treat the janitor when you walk in the building? How do you treat the crossing guard at the bus stop? How do I'm watching you or I'm listening for examples of you on how you treated those folks. Hey, coach, I saw you. I used to talk to a gentleman that was a janitor, not for us in our facility, but in the facility next to us. And they had a common wall. So they said, well, what are you old guys out here talking about? And why are you talking to him? And blah, 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 blah. I said, because he's a nice guy. Well, he's a
Mm-hmm.
janitor. I said, what's that got to do with it? I don't want to
Yeah.
be no I don't want to be no janitor, man. You know how athletes can get sometimes. I'm like, okay, well, when you're the low man on the totem pole, supposedly, then talk to me again about how you want to be treated.
Yeah. And that again is modeling, and then you had a
Right,
teachable moment, and you saw it, and you took it, and that is that social awareness as well.
right.
Like, okay, I see this as an opportunity. This is not sets and reps. This is not going to be on my CSCS exam,
No, no,
but it's going to be a valuable lesson that these dudes hopefully internalize, and then have an excellent decision when they have an opportunity to interact with anybody.
yeah. So, another one is I used to get on my daughter about it too. Is I said, hey, look, you see that person when you walk by them, if they look you right in the face, say good afternoon, good morning. You don't have to. I'm not requiring that you run across the street and speak to everybody that's out there. But if you both look at each other say it. They may not say it back to you, but that's not something for you to carry. What you carry is what you do, not what someone else does. So
And a, a lot of the athletes that you'll have in your weight room, they didn't get that lesson at home. So it's valuable for you to introduce that and model. And one thing I'd love to do. So currently coaching high school, I do the same strength and sport. I I, I absolutely love that, where I use weight room to speak to sport and sport to speak with weight room. And
okay,
I love that with in coaching lacrosse in dripping. So just after every practice, I'm not hanging out with the stragglers. I run to our gate that separates field to parking lot and just shake every single kid's hand on the way out to make sure, like, practicing, look them in the eyes, respectful, thank you for your effort today, and just modeling that behavior. That then, okay, this is the sportsmanship that I want to see after wins and losses. No matter how practice or games went, like, we're head held high, we're looking the opponent or our teammate in the eye. So aiming to model that behavior. And then also at the same time, I want I want practice. I want lacrosse. I want sport to be a sanctuary. And man, this is from Remember the Titans, right? The Coach Boone, he's like, this is this is my sanctuary. When he steps onto the
right,
field, like, I love movies, I love sports movies, I love quotes. So aim to help hand that off to guys. But, like, it doesn't matter what's going on in the world around you. Relationships, school, parents. You step onto the field, like lacrosse. This is particular to lacrosse, but this is the medicine game. It was invented by the Native Americans to, instead of killing each other for wars, they would compete. So that's so representative. I want them to understand, like, hey, this is the medicine game. This is the gift of the gods. You step onto the field, you respect the game, you respect your teammates, you respect yourself, and we're going to go a long way. So use that understanding, like, I can put it all behind me. It's not compartmentalizing, it's focusing
right.
and helping them understand that.
There's a difference between the need to compartmentalize and the need to focus,
Yeah, man.
and
So
you have to be able to do both, but it requires two different types of skill, uh, mental skill, psychological skill, two different types. But that's a whole nother podcast.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but to say, that, we talked a lot about, let's put it this way, we talked a lot about the young professionals and the athletes of today, and where you're kind of going, and what'd you call your what was it, 5 steps, seven?
Well, this social emotional leadership is what I'm
Okay,
calling it. So the root of this is actually social emotional learning. It's again, I've
right,
been on a long journey. This is in elementary school. It's actually how they teach elementary age
right,
kids to interact, to manage their behaviors, all a lot of different terms. So
right.
it took me 15 years to get to this stage where I'm connecting more to social skills and emotions for my athletes than the performance traits. But I had to understand performance traits and regulation and strength training and all that good stuff just to get here.
Well, they're not completely separate ever.
And yes, and the what I'm getting at is young coaches they're gonna make that mistake. They're going
Yep.
to only focus on sets and reps. I just want to help them understand there is more to this. And when a kid pushes back on their behavior or acts up, like, there's reason. So aim to connect.
So let's talk about motivational and emotional maturity. We talked a little bit about it not being
Hmm.
chronological age wise, but there are some things that you can kind of already understand motivation wise. Young athletes are seem to be where that motivation out front, when it's really underneath, they may not be motivated.
Hmm. So
older
they,
older older athletes tend to be, you might not think they're motivated by something, but they're highly motivated and they come to work for a specific reason. What that motivation is, tapping into that motivation is, I think, what is important to get the best performance out of them. But understanding what it is more important, because some guys aren't motivated by being the best player.
No, yeah, they want to be a part of a team.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's, I found that to be a lot of times with young athletes and a lot of times with female athletes, they like being part of the team. They like being part of the group and having a place to be and go, and they just happen to be good at this sport. But it's not the be all end all for them. Then I found that, the more involved with the sport the athlete is, or I hate to make it sound like it's every athlete, because it's never every athlete. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the more involved with the sport they are, might not be because they're motivated by the sport. They may be being motivated by someone else.
Oh yeah, and
so whether that's family, parent, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, that parent, that's a whole different podcast.
Yeah. That's a step beyond sometimes.
Yeah, what we can aim to simplify it, even though it's very complex. Is intrinsic and extrinsic. So
right. With the motivation, yeah, exactly.
And again, motivation, the psychology is a whole different podcast in itself. And
right.
Intrinsic versus extrinsic, I would focus on how the student athlete communicates about themselves. So in respect to extrinsic motivation, do they need me as a coach to reinforce their positive behaviors? So now the people that need me to acknowledge their performance, and it in the weight room, I'll use the weight room as an example. If someone is so, hey coach, come watch this set. Coach, did you see that?
Yeah.
I would take that back to they're an elementary age kid that's in a 22-year-old's body that needs some acknowledgement for their success.
Outside acceptance.
Exactly. Awesome. I'm not going to hold them against them now.
No, that's just where they are.
I'm going to take a note, and then I'm going to reinforce that, and then try to turn it into intrinsic motivation just by having them ask them how their set was. So now it's no longer me affirming them. It's asking, hey, how do you feel that set went?
Right.
Or it's as simple as, hey, did you feel that in your hamstrings? So now I'm turning into some mind-muscle connection with the goal of motivation. So now I'm making it more of a mental process, and now we're just having them focus on their set versus where coach is during their set.
Right. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then in terms of intrinsic motivation, that's the ultimate goal. But with intrinsic motivation, what I don't want to turn it into is a shame spiral. And I'm speaking from 100% my personal journey here as a young Irish Catholic, and then working for a boss who used shame as a motivator. That is something you turn into a perfectionist, and it's not about perfection as a coach. It's about connection. So no rep, it will be perfect. No set will be perfect. No game, as much as we prepare, will be perfect.
The only thing that we need perfect is effort.
Exactly. So what behavior? How can I now intrinsically motivate them? So it starts with the coach on their shoulder. So saying, hey, we're applauding behaviors now. That was an awesome effort today. Way to give your all during squats or sprints, whatever it is. So I need to make a mental note on every single player. Hey, that was awesome attitude, teamwork, etc. for the behaviors that I want. It's tough. But I have a clipboard. Go ahead.
When I had a 9,800 square foot facility there in Columbia for a while, and when we were at our best, I would have athletes walk out and tell me what was their effort that day. Hey, coach, that wasn't my best effort today. I'll be better I'll be better tomorrow. And I'm thinking in my head, you were a beast in there today.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they would say that, and I'd go, you don't think that was a very good effort? So I thought your effort was pretty good. I said your energy might have been down a little bit, but what's going on? See, that led to me that being able to kind of feel around and see what he was feeling, as opposed to letting him walk away thinking that was a horrible effort when I thought it was a pretty good effort.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was fighting through something. Listen, I hate to stop when we are going along and I look up and I see the clock and I go, man, we've been an hour already. But, production gets mad at me sometimes when I go over too far. So I try not to go over too far, especially when I'm by myself. But listen, we are close enough that we ought to think about a collaboration at some point.
Oh yeah.
Just something small. Nothing huge or way out of the way. But I like to get together sometimes when I can and work with other professionals and just do something. Don't know what that is. But I try to always make that offer in different settings. I don't say it too much on here, but that would be good because we're close enough. And I think we think similar.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a pleasure having you on. I'm going to ask you one final question that we ask sometime, okay?
Yes, sir.
But it's not serious.
Perfect. That's my game.
So here we go. If you had to choose an athlete from any sport, an athlete, not a person, an athlete by position in sport. If you had to choose an athlete from any sport that would have a great chance of being successful in any other sport they participated in, which athlete would it be?
I'll let my bias speak for itself here, but I'm going C.J. Stroud, not only as a Houston Texans fan.
Just go position.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, man.
For example, okay? I'll give you an example.
All right.
If I were a midfielder in lacrosse, would I be a successful midfielder in hockey? Do I have all the attributes as an athlete or a mid-iceman or you know what I mean? Do I have all the necessary attributes to be successful in any other sport by virtue of playing this sport in this position?
I got you. I'm sticking with my bias because I battle football coaches all the time to let kids play lacrosse. It's a spring sport. They're afraid that it's going to get them hurt. But the difference between football, where you run into, in lacrosse, you evade. And we're starting to see more and more lacrosse players in college make it as successful professional athletes in the NFL and the NBA. So that's an incredible leap. They are Division I lacrosse players that go to the NFL. And then now on Golden State Warriors, he is a backup, but he's on the Warriors. So we're seeing that.
I've always been a proponent of playing multiple sports. Grew up playing multiple sports. I think it's a cross-training art that has been lost in this 35 to 40 year run of specialization of kids in sports.
Yeah. Unfortunately, club ball has made it into lacrosse, and it's doing some dirty things, nasty people, and just the money is ruining the game in that respect. So, like
a lot of times, man. The reason this is social and economic, but the reason clubs popped up and became so popular is I don't think that's the foundation of it now, but it was it used to be every inner city had a baseball field, a soccer field, and inner city all the way out to the suburbs you could find these things, but you couldn't get those athletes spread out.
Yeah.
You understand what I mean? A lot of the athletes were well, before I go into a long diatribe about that, let's just say that's a big thing. But the club systems in sports have priced a lot of athletes out of participation because parents can't afford it. And that's in some cases, I'd say in probably 60% of the cases, that's purposely done.
I concur, and on that note, those salesmen are selling fantastic lies about how their son, daughters are so skilled, and then they ride the bench when those teams travel, so the parents can't see it. They're
Right.
writing the checks, and then when those kids go back to their high school coaches, who are honest, like, hey, you're here, I need you to work on X. They've
Right.
built their self awareness is low. They've built up this ego from a coach they're writing checks to, and they stop listening to the high school coach who's, I got
Yeah.
nothing to gain here. I'm being honest. I want you to succeed. Like I'm making peanuts, and it
But
starts
there's
to
a
have conflict, and no, they lose trust because of a fantastic lie.
yeah, there's a whole scenario. But listen, man.
We can go on forever. I
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
No, I appreciate your time and you coming on and us talking, because once I get talking on some subjects, I rattle on and I don't stop, and I try to stop, but I can't stop. So it goes on and on. But I appreciate you coming on. I look forward to talking to you some more, and maybe getting together on a couple things. But more importantly, keep doing what you're doing. Um, I've looked at your work a little bit. I knew you were in Dripping Springs. I knew you came from Dripping Springs. I didn't know you were going back.
Yeah.
So, um, and in the future, if you just want to drop a note, ask me if I have time for something. Just do that. Man, I could keep going, but ladies and gentlemen, I've been here with. I'm gonna try it again. I'm gonna mess it up. Chris McQuilkin.
That's it.
I'm here with